Hello and welcome to the Kingdom Says podcast. I am not Garrett, who is your traditional host of this show. I'm Kyle, who is usually one of the co-hosts. Joining me today for another round of draft talk because, well, what are we, Tom? 10, 12 days? I can't even. My brain doesn't work right now.
10 days. 10 days.
Well, by the time you're hearing this, it'll be 10 days for sure.
Less than 10 days. We're almost there, guys. We're almost there.
We're getting through there. Joining me tonight, obviously, is my co-host, Arrowhead, Tom. Tom,
Hello.
how you doing? You ready? You good to go? You ready for this
here.
draft?
Yeah. I'm
All right.
Ready. I'm ready to get to the 2024 class, but I'm ready.
Tom is over this draft class and already started ready to be working on the next one.
The receivers next year are actually over 6 feet tall. There's like more than one of them. Anyways, continue.
So we're going to be talking about receivers tonight, and helping us talk about receivers tonight, joining us is Mr. Zack Eisen. Zack, how are you doing today, sir?
I'm doing well, but I just need to note that, Tom, there's only one receiver in next year's class. It's just Marvin, and that's it.
Oh yeah, that. I hope we're not in position to take him, to be honest with you, fully in full disclosure. But yeah, he's pretty much 1A next year without much of a question.
No, I would listen. I would love to be in position. I mean, he's going. I mean, if it happened tomorrow, we're talking like he'd probably go top 5 in this draft class. Like, I would suffer a bad year just to pair Marvin with Mahomes for the next decade. I would take that. I would trade that.
I just don't want to.
We could go winless this year.
Just get a bunch of picks next year and then sell the farm.
There you go. Just make sure you have at least 2 firsts for next year so you can get into range wherever you need to. Because that way you can give up 2 firsts, a second, and whatever you got to do from there. Because especially because they're current year firsts, so they're worth more than those future year firsts that some teams are going to offer to get there.
Listen, you tag and trade Chris Jones, the whole thing works
out. I will fight you. We are not. We are not doing that. In the news-related category, and since our guest is the one who helped highlight that for most of the Chiefs Kingdom today, we had some new additions at Patrick Mahomes phase 1 of OTAs or whatever they're calling it. Patrick seems to have a schedule from what we heard from James Palmer. He seems to have worked out accommodations for the folks. We seem to be rotating players in and out. And today we got a Kadarius Toney edition. Travis Kelce came out of his hangover and returned to training for football-related activities. And there was a special guest, it appeared, today at the at least the throwing portion of the workouts for the boys today. Zach, who was that you spotted in the Instagram photos there with Sky and Kadarius and the rest of the crew?
Yeah, it was a TCU wide receiver, or soon to be NFL wide receiver in about 10 days, as we said.
Give or take.
Quentin Johnson.
So
soon to be number 31 in the 2022 draft.
Naturally, as Tom just said, Chiefs Kingdom handled that normally and well, rationed out and rationalized and well, and didn't think about, most of them probably didn't put together the part that they were at TCU working out where Quentin played his college ball up until like a month ago when they had that unfortunate ending in the semifinal game.
No, in the national championship.
No, it was the championship game.
It should have just ended. They should have just stopped after the semifinal game and just been like, it's all good. We don't even want to. It's all right. From that perspective, not a bad thing for a guy going into the draft to get some extra workouts in with the best quarterback in the NFL, period, on his behalf. But what do you guys? I know everybody wants to do the no more Patrick picks. Stop. That wasn't Patrick's pick to begin with. He just signed off on it because it was already done. That's how this works. This is the way this operates. Getting him to have extra eyes on a guy like that early, and someone that's potentially in your range now. It's not tampering because, well, he's not in the league yet, I don't think. So I don't think that matters. And so getting some extra work in with a quarterback who's essentially running his own offseason program at this point with the blessing of Andy Reid, what does that do for potential information for the Chiefs, potential information for other teams that are watching that or looking at that? And now they're like, well, how do we get video of that? So where do you both fall on the category of what that actually means for him? Because naturally everybody says, "Oh, he's a chief. 31. They're trading up." All right, okay, I get it. But from your guys' angle, what's that look like? And let's let Zach go first since he's the guest.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say that look, boards are probably locked at this point. Like, no, they're not going to be changing unless it's off the field related things that come up. So,
Laramie
if
Tunsil gas
Johnson,
mask.
yeah, if Johnson was 3 on, he's not that high. Like if he was 3 on somebody's board, he's going to stay there. If he was 103 on someone else's board, he's going to stay there. Like it's not going to change probably. But from a perspective of Mahomes working out with him, he probably, who probably calls him immediately after he gets into the car. Brett Veach is on the phone with Patrick saying, "Okay, what did you see?" And that's just an input thing for in case he is BPA or the guy or the best, the guy
or in range
31.
if they decide that they do like him and want to go get him, or at 31, because as I've been telling you guys for months, if you have the ability to find if the Chiefs will trade up in this draft as a line in the first round, I would hammer it. I genuinely don't think there's any way Brett can sit on his hands, especially since Clark demanded that they have a pick to make an impact pick with the player in this draft in their town. They're going to go get whoever they want if they have to. So that's been my thing. The question I have for you is, who do you think called who first, actually? Do you think Brett made the phone call first, or do you think Pat was already walking off the field with his phone in his hand going, hey, buddy, guy, so I just spent 2 hours with...
Yeah, I probably Patrick calls him because
that was my guess.
Easier because he knows when it ends and stuff. But Brett is definitely aware that Quentin was there the whole day, either through an agent, through Patrick knowing, through Travis knowing, through whoever else knew. And I just think from perspective was when I first saw it, I was like, okay, that's important. I bet you yeah, Sky's there, Tony's there, Richie James is there, whoever else is there. That's nice and stuff. But the people who really matter to Brett to see Quentin is Patrick and Travis. And whatever they say, he's going to take that as real feedback.
Mm-hmm.
That was going to be one of the things I was going to ask Tom about, was how interesting is it that the day that Travis shows up and the day that Kadarius is in town and the day that basically the whole number one, what we assume to be the number one offensive weapon tree is present, is the day we spot a potential first round wide receiver in town in workouts with that group. And I think Zach just highlighted one of the bigger points on that is, yeah, Travis was there with Patrick as well, and they were working with him. So from that perspective and down that same lens, what does it mean, Tom? Mr. Hold on. We've got to go down Tom's track record here, because he called the Orlando. Well, not only did he call it, he basically manifested the Orlando Brown thing a couple years ago, and was nails on that. And for the 2 years we rented him, it worked out just fine. You got a ring, you got another AFC title game appearance. Everybody happy, everybody lucky. He got paid, and we got to move on. The next year, he has basically told us we were trading up, almost nailed the where you traded up to. The only thing we didn't have was, and you put both players that you were that they apparently looked at that position on the board. So Tom's been on a little bit of a run with the whole what's Brett gonna do here and how this might go. What's that mean in that kind of scenario when you look at that kind of stuff and you factor this kind of stuff in?
Well, so I think one of the things that we've heard, and this was just this week too, Andy and Brett talk about, Patrick's involvement in the process and how they text and share about, thoughts on this. So at the very least, this, Quentin being there didn't hurt anything. Without knowing how it all, you don't know, it's pretty easy for you to go, all right, we're going to run this. We don't know if they were, share, there's some part of it where Quentin's going to be picking up on some of the language and the terminology, and I'm sure they kept it basic, but it really, it's functionally, it's a private workout without your scouts or coaching staff. And I think, I'm surprised we don't see that more in the NFL. If I were an NFL quarterback, I understand you have the off season, you have valuable time. I'd be especially, and I know you mentioned the Clyde pick, and I want to, that's that's so much different compared to when you have a skill position player, a wide receiver, tight end, somebody who has to like, work as part of that group and work as part of that unit. So I'm sure that there was, a conversation about, hey, don't tell him this, don't tell him that. Like, don't give away any trade secrets. But in terms of like probably some of the concepts and it's also important to see, I think you're in a little bit more of a natural position and that camaraderie, like it's just like, when I played football in high school, like how we acted with the coaches around was much different compared to, when it was just the boys.
Oh, dear God, yes.
And so I
don't know of any competitive locker room in any sport that isn't that way.
And so I think that's a huge part. Like how does he respond, especially in that scenario where it's like, Patrick Patrick and Travis were probably the ones telling him, oh, hey, you did this, or you need to do this better, like coaching him up a little bit. So I think it's an interesting look at the dynamic. I think I said this in our private group chat. I said, I'll say this. I think if Patrick walked out of there going, man, I want Quentin, and it's a realistic possibility he doesn't go top 15, top 18, whatever. I would not be shocked if it happened. And at the same time, it is draft season, and it could be as innocent as, oh, hey, he was just there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you don't necessarily,
because he is local and he did go to school there.
Yeah, but I think if I remember correctly, they've met with him at the combine. I think they had him in for a visit. I'm making that up, but
I think we can check Goldie's Mr. Goldman's tracker of visits. He's got the
30.
Yeah. So by
the way, Goldie has one of the best top 30 lists. That thing stays up to date all the time, the time. It's so nice.
Shout out. Also, like, it is the Chiefs very often go to that well when it's draft day. So a lot of the times they are bringing.
You said something, and then we'll transition into the draft portion of the wide receivers, and then what's actually outside of obviously the guy who was present today. You said something in there that I think is interesting. You asked, you said, I don't know why you don't see it more in the NFL. Well, I have a question for the two of you. How many quarterbacks in this league do you trust to run their own off-season program and provide scouting and that kind of feedback and information to front offices that they can rely on? Because I'm curious as to what that number is for you guys. Because a lot of the old heads that were real into, they're not here anymore. Most of those dudes are gone. Now you've got a bunch of young guns who, some of them are stars, but they're stars. They're not elite yet. Do you trust them to run their own camps yet? Because what Patrick is doing, we don't see, as Tom mentioned, like ever. And you very rarely see it with a coach like Andy Reid, who likes to usually have his thumb on everything. So how many quarterbacks in this league do you realistically trust to make do those kind of things, give that kind of insight? Because for me, I think it's probably on one hand. That's, I think, why we don't see it more.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the only two times I've ever heard of this happening is Mahomes and then Brady in the COVID year.
Yeah, when he got fined for it because he was doing it illegally.
Yeah. But, like, I mean, I'm sure he's done that, like, legally, too. But I'm just, like, that's the only two times I heard of it. The rest of the times I've heard of this stuff happening, it's just like, oh, we went out and threw a few days, not like ran OTAs outside of the facility. Like all the other teams have OTAs right now inside their
building.
Facility. So like you said, on one hand, like I think as much as like we have like our rivalry with them, like I think Joe Burrow could do it.
He's still young, so I'd be curious just to see how that would look. But I also think he's young from a NFL perspective. He's old from a how many times have you done this, run a camp? Because you guys, people don't remember it. He was at like 3 major Division I programs with 3 different types of camp, and he's done them all. And then he goes in and does those. So I'm sure Joe could do it. Joe's in that list. He's just
and he's also like 6 months younger than Mahomes. You don't think about it, but because he was drafted 3 years later, 2 years later,
right?
So, but he's close to age Mahomes. So like, it's not that super young. I'm trying to think of like other young guys who can do it. Like I don't even know if I would trust Lamar Jackson can't do it. Jalen Hurts probably would trust him. But
but that one's
he's
weird
still like,
because of the offense they run too.
yeah, so it's a little bit different. But yeah,
Because
I
for me,
think
it's
it's
like
definitely
Burrow,
one hand.
Rodgers, Mahomes.
Well, Rodgers doesn't want to do it.
Well, yeah, Rodgers
Mhm.
would not do it, but he could do it if he chose to do it. He's more than intelligent enough to do that and capable enough.
Yeah, when Brady unretires, you can add him to the list.
Yeah, Tom, but like there's a very limited number of guys left in this league. Like there's some veterans maybe like he's not people may not think he's the best quarterback in the world, but Derek Carr could probably run his own camp right now. He's been in the league, been
Mhm.
doing this so long and especially before he had new system and new coaches when it had been the same system for 4 years or whatever it was.
Mhm.
He could run his own camp probably. Like
I'd
there's
say
guys, but like
Aaron Rodgers, but that doesn't really do
yeah,
much when he's on
he's
the
not going to
Packers.
do it.
So.
And he's also not going to do it because that Aaron,
Yeah.
that's just not who Aaron is. So
But that goes back to, like you said, the two that are known. I mean,
you
Tom
can't.
Brady was the big one. Like
Yeah.
that's that hyper competitiveness of Mahomes. And this is what his second year of kind of doing this.
Well, and it's partially in part and partial because it worked so well last year.
Well, and I think also the other part,
Did it work?
as much as the COVID year,
I don't know. It looked like a ring at the end of the year, but
yeah,
possible.
All right.
the
I'm just
COVID
making
year,
sure.
yeah, I think the COVID year helped even Andy and all those guys like they, because we kind of saw a shift in those early off season weeks where the teams can be meeting in person, where Andy's talked about like, yeah, we'll just do some zooming and trust the guys are working out on their own, and Patrick gets the guys together. Like it's an interesting dynamic because again that helps them build rapport. One of the things that like, and I've never been there, but I just NFL players talk about the amount of money they spend on their bodies and on their diets and on like all that stuff. Like that continues through the off season, and like the off season's recovering. We were just talking this week about Patrick's ankle still recovering, right? And for us as fans, like mentally, that feels like all right, like it feels like Madden, where it's like all right, we've sent him to the next week. He's not on the injury report. We're good to go. That's not how it works. And so he's still recovering, and so this off-season time is important for that, for the bodies to heal, for them to kind of figure some things out, and also to spend time with their families, right? It's, the NFL schedule is pretty grueling, and the Chiefs played as long of a schedule as you can play. So
pair that with the part where a lot of these kids, or several of those kids, were rookies or first-year NFL players, or have never really done that before, and like Sky Moore, that last year was the longest year of his life.
Mm-hmm.
They went from playing games to combine prep to draft to minicamp to go to Super Bowl. Like that's as long a year as you can get as a rookie. It doesn't get any longer than that. So that ability to, and Andy talked about it in the pressers, of to let the guys have the little extra time, but also be able to still make sure they're getting their work in. We can still do the Zooms and stuff. We can still go over stuff. But the part about Patrick and Tom and that kind of being now those two, and when you look at things like that, he's learning from greatness on purpose, and he's taking what has worked for somebody who he's chasing, who's also, and I did not ever think I would be saying this stuff out loud, is being gracious enough on his end to also recognize Patrick and want to work with Patrick, because there's a lot of stories about Brady being an absolute a-hole to just about anybody opposing quarterback wise he doesn't like or doesn't respect, especially if he loses to you, right? Like those stories are out there, and they're not small in number because we've heard about them plenty. Mahomes has beaten him, I think. Now he's beaten him enough and lost to him, and yet Brady, after all of those, went to Mahomes, and in a couple instances went to Mahomes' locker room to make contact, and they've talked about the conversation. So when he's going in and doing that stuff, and he's learning and developing that kind of thing already in his career, where Tom started to do that stuff, as we mentioned, much later. This for me is the only thing is an advantage for the Chiefs, because you can get opportunities like, hey, there's going to be a lot of wide receivers in the next 10 years that come out of Texas universities, whether it's TCU, UT, Baylor, whatever. Well, if Patrick works out down there every year, and they know he works out down there every year. And if receivers can find their way to get some extra work in with the best quarterback in the NFL, especially draft prospects, they're probably going to do it. That's a free scouting thing that they don't have to worry about because he's intelligent enough and knows what they want because he's the one that wants it enough at that position to scout it while he's standing there looking at it and give that feedback to the front office that you can trust. So, on that note, let's talk about this wide receiver class, which is what none of us want to do, and that's why we just spent 20 minutes talking about anything else we could but this wide receiver draft class. Where do you guys want to start?
Yeah, let's just rip the Band-Aid off. Zach, who's your number one receiver in this class?
Quentin Johnson.
It was who? Sorry.
Quentin Johnston.
Okay, the one we just talked about?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Tell me
Tom?
why he is the top guy for you.
Okay, so it comes down to athletic profile, yards after catch, creating that. I think there's really good numbers when it comes to his separation against man, even though he's not technically a refined route runner yet. You can use him deep. You can have the speed to be a gadget guy early in his career. It's a good size to hold up against the NFL. You got to obviously teach him more like technical ability as a receiver, but I think everything physical traits there, and then he's just a monster after the catch. Like he creates yards out of nothing, and that patented that Kelsey like half spin move where he like fakes out one way and spins the other way. Q has that same exact move in his arsenal, and it's like it works every time. So
Q, I like it.
for those
we already got a short name for him too.
Yeah, we're already calling him Q.
Yeah, so that's the reason he's like my number one receiver in this class.
Tom, who's yours?
Okay. Before I do that, Zach, let me ask this because I think our 1 or 2s are probably the same. They're just flip flopped. Who's your number 2?
JSN.
Okay. Yeah. So our 1 and 2s are JSN.
Oh, I'm surprised by both of you at the moment.
Now hold on. JSN gets number 1 over Johnston just because I think he's a safer prospect. I think Johnston fits more of what the Chiefs are looking for in terms of a boundary receiver. But I think if you're sitting there with both on the board, it's tough. Like it really, I guess it's more philosophical.
I'll say this: JSN is Juju. Like that's his.
Yeah.
Like I almost think that's like his. That's where he's gonna.
I actually kind of like that comp because they do.
He might be like a higher end Juju. Like the guy's just gonna dominate in the slot.
Mm-hmm.
He's willing to play physical, runs good routes. I think he's a better route runner than Juju. He's not as physical as Juju, but still has that capability. But he's not a burner after the catch. But he's just gonna get open and do the dirty work for you.
And he's not having to deal with Vontaze Burfict types anymore like Juju was, so we don't have to have quite as much nasty as Juju did.
Yeah. I think that the floor for JSN is higher, but I think the ceiling for Johnston is a lot higher too. So now again, I say that in terms of the rankings. If I'm sitting there on draft day, it's a hard discussion because I also want to go, we're pairing this kid with Patrick Mahomes, who's probably going to bring out the best in him. So let's go ahead and go with the higher upside guy. So it's a philosophical debate in that sense, but like I felt like the other part that weighed heavily into that was I know that Ohio State has a phenomenal wide receiver coach and has churned out some good players. And even though we didn't get to see as much of like JSN as the featured guy, like we were hoping, I mean, he wasn't going to be the featured guy with Marvin there, but at least a bigger role. There's enough from that 2021 tape to make me go. I remember watching Olave and Wilson from last year and going, "Who's this kid who keeps making all these plays? This is number 11." And that's always a cool moment when somebody pops like that.
Unfortunately, I don't think the Chiefs are going to have that dilemma on draft night. I think Jason's going to go the first wide receiver off the board, and he will not be even in range to be traded up for the Chiefs.
I agree with you there. This brings me to my question on this because I'm a little surprised by both of you that this name isn't in somebody's top 2 because he's flown up just about every board I've seen at wide receiver position. Now, when I say flown up, he was like top 4 when the year started anyway at worst. But what's the conversation on Jordan Addison?
Oh my God.
Garrett would like to know too.
I love Jordan Addison. I've fallen in love with him over the last.
Uh-oh. There we go. Now it's back.
Started watching.
You're cutting a little, but it's all good.
It's me. I unplugged his internet because what he was about to say about Jordan Addison wasn't true. Jordan Addison isn't him. I'm going to say this while Zach is still frozen. He'll come back eventually, but I'm just going to.
No, Garrett's not here either. Tom's
we
taking the opportunity while he's got it.
Buy time. Yeah. As Zach was saying, Zach was agreeing with me that Jordan Addison isn't him. So, welcome back, Zach. You froze for a minute, but I had it covered for you. We can.
that's
Garrett would probably
guys.
much like to hear Zach's wrap up there on that one, probably more than Tom's edition.
Okay, so I went through when I was first initially watching Addison. I went through the USC tape because that's the most recent tape, and I'm like, solid player, like undersized is fine, like gets open, works underneath well, doesn't have burner speed, but understands how to run routes and that stuff. And I was like, okay, like he was my wide receiver 4 or 5 at that time. And then I went back and watched the Pitt tape recently.
I was gonna say, and then you went back and watched that Big Ten tape from when he played at Pitt, and
this man made Kenny Pickett a first-round quarterback. Why is he not like? Why is it so hard? Like he separates. Like JSN might be a better route runner, but the way that Addison attacks leverage and understands how to separate, he's probably the best in this class at it.
Can I give an idea of why that may be the idea on Addison may have shifted? And I think it's partially why I've been more down on him than I probably should have been. I gave Garrett quite a bit of grief last episode about Jordan Addison. So I think part of it has to do with, you just said it. He made Kenny Pickett look like an actual quarterback and made him a first-round draft pick. And he was simply with Caleb Williams, who is supposedly the second coming of the guy playing quarterback for us. So yeah, it's tough, I think, for a lot of people to watch him make Kenny Pickett look like a god and then go to USC with what should be worse competition in a lot of areas outside of like Washington in the secondary, and with a better quarterback and not dominate in a similar fashion. Now, part of that is because there were a tiny bit more weapons at USC than they had at Pitt, but that's a hard look at for normal people to just be like, oh, what happened? So that, I think, is some of the topic with Addison, is why did he not look as good with the better quarterback as he did with
his testing was
in Pittsburgh?
His testing was so pedestrian. I'm going to compare. Hold on. I'm going to compare Jordan Addison to another prospect in this draft class. Zach, I'll be curious if you can figure out who it is. So they both ran a 4.49. Jordan Addison had the advantage of the 10-yard split, 156 to 161. Jordan Addison had a 34-inch vertical. This prospect had a 37.5-inch. And then they had a 10.5-inch broad jump. Addison had a 10 and 2-inch broad jump.
Did this wide receiver happen to play in the ACC?
I didn't say it was a wide receiver.
Oh, that's a hint for Zach. Did you just comp him athletically to a tight end? Oof. If it is, it would have been.
Say who it is.
Adetamwa Adebore. Which also we should acknowledge that's a freaky comment.
That's freakish for that dude.
Adebore is 282 pounds. He's over 100 pounds heavier than Jordan Addison.
That's crazy.
I just need more. That's my concern. And then when you watch him on tape, I do worry about his physicality. But I agree with you, like leverage and understanding and like just playing in space. Like he's like, to me, I think there's more bust potential to him than what it feels like other people think. Just because it feels like he's either going to be successful, like he's going to be a Devontae Smith, like an outlier, because he has to be. 173 is really light. There's not many people who have, like in NFL history, not many wide receivers who have made it. Like it's Torrey or Isaac Bruce and Devontae Smith and maybe Jordan Addison. And so it's like you're kind of betting on that outlier. And when you bet on those outliers, like there are things you want to see that are like, oh, he has an elite, he has this elite trait. I just didn't see an elite trait that got me really excited, other than, like you said, like the leverage and all of that, like understandable. and then just
So where are we? Because this is my concern with him, I guess, when I've watched him and done this, is I don't know how he's going to do getting off the ball on off the line in the NFL with anybody that puts hands on him. Like from a press situation, it concerns me that he's going to have to be the guy that Andy constantly puts in motion to be able to get him off the ball at the line of scrimmage if they ends up with us because he has no problem once he's in the route. It's getting to his route that I see him struggle with at times, especially with corners that like to be a little bit physical. And in the NFL, all of them are.
And I mean, and to his credit, I think he does have, like, last year when we were talking about Sky Moore as a prospect, like his ability to, like, his release package and just to move off the line and, you know, make guys miss with their hands, like that was an elite trait for him. That he's got baseball gloves for hands, but you know, there is some of that. I would say Addison's above average, and maybe in my head I'm comparing the two, and that's not fair. But I don't think he's completely helpless against press. But I think it's a fair concern. He's still. I think I've got. My soul wants to drop him out of my top 5, make him like number 6. But this class is trash and not very good.
So this leads me to my next kind of the round, or my next final piece for me anyway on this, since we've got kind of through the first 3. I think that's at least, Zach, that's your first 3, right?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Tom, if you're gonna drop him out of there, who are the guys, and I think I know the name of at least one of them, that you would have over him? And if I'm right in one, he went to Boston College.
Yeah.
And one went to Tennessee.
Yeah. So yeah, I've moved Zay Flowers up, and I should make it clear that I hated Zay Flowers. Like, I was like, I looked at his measurables, I watched a little bit of his tape, and I went,
I did too, but that's because we dealt with him at Boston College for 4 years.
It's all the same stuff. He's shorter than Addison, more compact frame. Like, I was like, all right, great, another short guy. Like, I don't know, it's not fair. Like, I'm not. You know, and him and Josh Downs, there's just a lot of guys. I don't think they're the same player, but I think they win in similar fashions. And I think when I watch the two, Zay has some more uniqueness to his movement. He did test better. I think if I remember right, his 10-yard split was like in the 99th percentile or the 100th percentile. It's not much.
His stop start and cuts on his change direction on tape is better than Addison's for sure. Like, when he has ball in his hands, it's better.
Yeah.
See, and this is where I get stuck, because I watched Zay at least once a year in games because I'm a Notre Dame fan. And look, y'all, no offense to Boston College quarterback group, but
oh no, it was bad.
Holy crap! All right, like, and what he did with that at quarterback, that's where, like we were talking about Addison earlier, that's where when I'm sitting there watching this tape and I'm like, yeah, Kenny Pickett was bad, but he wasn't Phil Jerkovich bad. And no offense, Phil, I'm a Notre Dame fan. You went to Notre Dame first. Trust me, I watched you there too. Like, holy crap. And then you got Kenny Pickett and Caleb Williams on the other side, and you're watching this tape, and then Tom talks about the measurables, and I'm just sitting here going, I can't figure out, because we all see the same stuff. Addison above Flowers by a mile. Addison all over the place by a lot of by the experts, the big names, and a lot.
I really don't think it's like that. I think Flowers is going to go before Addison. I think Flowers and James are going to go. They're going to go before the Chiefs even get, or maybe Zay might slip into the range, but I don't think those two are viable options for the Chiefs just by the way the NFL views them, not public or whatever. Just by the way NFL views them, and like looking at mocks and stuff, those guys are consistently the first 2 guys off the board.
Yeah, and that's where I'm at, because Zay for me just checks more boxes than Addison. That's where I was on that whole deal.
Mm-hmm. So where does Zay rank for you, Zach?
He's 4th, and like those 4 like are pretty much like they're a tier above everybody else. For me, I would be fine with all of them in round 1. 31 is great for all of them. Trading up, I don't like if 2 are on the board and you trade up. I don't love it. Like if you're getting your like the last guy in that tier, then I can understand it better. But
How
yeah,
far?
they're all
22, 25? Like
25.
McDuffie range or
Yeah,
like
like use 31 and 95 to get to 25 if your fourth guy's there or whatever. Like I don't mind that because I think like if you look at my grades, like they're all like 2 points of each other, and that's like nothing really. Like it's really just little things that
it's a preference thing at that point between those guys on what you think on that grouping. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So this might be, I don't know. This is my thought process. If I'm sitting there at 31 and all four of those guys are there, maybe I need to make Quentin Johnson. I'm going to say this, and I'm going to go. I need to move my rankings around. I don't think I would move up. I don't think I would move up for Jordan Addison. I would maybe move up probably within 5 picks, like if I had to give up a day 3 selection for Zay Flowers. When you're talking about making a jump into the 20s, that's where
you can't jump much from 31 without going.
I say you only got 2 spots, bro.
That's fair. Into the higher 20s. Listen, this is not a math-based podcast. Into the higher 20s or the lower 20s.
Getting near that teens.
21.
Near that
a move like they
range.
made last year for McDuffie. That to me says I'm going after Quentin Johnston. Even Jackson Smith and Jigba, who I'm like is the number 1 guy. I think he's close enough in terms of like the skill set that he offers that like let's say okay, if all 4 of them are sitting there at 21, right?
I wouldn't move.
No, I know. I know. I'm saying I'm not moving up to go.
I'm sitting on my hands until at least
I have
2
to
of
get
them are off
one
the
of
board.
them. But if only one of them is left, I think the only one I'd really make a big move for is Quentin. Just because but I agree with you, Zach, in terms of like that being the first kind of pocket of receivers. And I'm curious if
this is where it's going to get interesting.
Yeah.
This is the part where I'm curious to see where this goes.
Second round type, third round type talk. With the receivers, the room that we currently have, and this is kind of like going back to Veach's like history and draft. When you look at like his last few draft picks, like last 2 years, for example, like the first 2 draft picks, like Bolton, who I have my qualms with, everyone knows, but like safe pick, like what you were getting with him. Creed Humphrey, center, what you're getting with him. Trent McDuffie, size limitation, but just an incredible football player. And George, not the bendiest guy, but he has insane power. So like there was certain like floors there with every player that like Veach
and they all had a trait.
Yeah, they could rely on. I don't know, and this is just me playing devil's advocate because I obviously love Q, but like I don't know if they would be willing to trade up for Quentin because they have like Kadarius, who's such a volatile, like there's so much range of outcomes for him. You don't know what the sky is. Like you don't have that. Like, okay, besides Travis, who can we turn to say like on a given play, like you're going to be the second guy? Like they don't have that right now, and like. Scantling, like everyone.
That's the only guy in the locker room you can talk about because he's the only guy that's shown that they can do that with him, and he did it in the playoffs. But we also watched him not do that for like 14 or 15 games last year. So
yeah, so like that's where my like, if I'm thinking about from a Brett Veach perspective, where I'm like, they might prefer an Addison type or a JSN type because they know that they can stick him in the slot at minimum and say, go separate at 10 yards and Pat will find you.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
All right. Next tier, and this is where I have a feeling the variance is going to enter the equation. Tom, take it away.
Mine has.
And actually, I'm going to briefly get out of the way for a moment. So.
Yeah. I'm just going to give you my next 4 in order.
Okay.
And you can argue with me or not. And this has changed recently, but they go Jonathan Mingo, Cedric Tillman, Marvin Mims, Jalen Hyatt.
Okay.
Fight me.
I don't mind it. I really don't. I have Hyatt's my 5, Tillman 6, and Mingo 7 for me. So like
Okay.
we're around the same range there. Mims, I'm lower on than everybody else, and like
Mhm.
I think a lot of people have come up lately on Mims, and I see
Mhm.
it. Like he's athletic, runs like very good deep threat. My question is like, what does he do besides running deep? And like from like if you're looking at it from a Hyatt perspective, like Hyatt's better than him at it, and
Mhm.
like you're still not getting much from Hyatt outside of the deep threat stuff, and that's where my thing is with Mims. Like I don't know like
Yeah.
where the other production comes from besides like okay, you're gonna go around a 7 or a 9.
Mhm. I agree with that in a lot of ways. I think with me, Mims gets a little bit of the edge because um, he put up with a lot of interesting times in his career at Oklahoma, and he's been pretty consistent. I can see the skill set. I also think like if we're talking, would I rather have Jalen Hyatt at 31 or Marvin Mims at 63? I'd probably prefer Marvin Mims and another player at
Yeah,
31.
I would agree with that for sure.
Yeah, so I think it's the ceiling with Hyatt is definitely higher. Um, I want to like Hyatt more than I do. I just see. I don't know if it's maybe I'm just having like McCole Hardman related PTSD, but like that's what a lot of what I see with Hyatt.
A lot of people knock Hyatt, and it's a fair knock about the fake offense and how Tennessee runs their offense and stuff. But like when I watch him and just looking at traits and stuff, like the speed is apparent. He does attack leverage really well downfield, and a lot of the stuff like ball tracking and his hands are incredible. Like you don't see like sometimes guys are body catchers, like especially when they go deep, they try to reel everything in, and he catches stuff with his hands well, and that's something where it's translatable at the next level. So I really like that trait from him.
Well, and it's a weird like, and that's where it's like this last season for Hyatt was so good. And then it's also kind of like, where the hell has that been for, the last couple of years? Like the 1 year wonder thing does scare me a little bit, but also I know that he didn't have as many opportunities with some of the guys in front of him and some injury stuff last year. I think I heard in an interview, he talked about how he like acknowledged that he wasn't even treating things maybe as seriously as he should. And this last year, like he really, I think he got hurt early last year. Or at some point in the season, it kind of like checked out mentally. But he owned that and, really did a lot of work this offseason. And like we saw this kind of step up. So I think I don't dislike Jalen Hyatt. I wouldn't be thrilled with him at 31, which seems to be, at least for a while, that was like a popular thing. Like, oh, speed to the Chiefs. But the same thing with Mims. I was pretty low on him for a while. I was worried about like his actual same thing. I mean, you could talk about the Oklahoma offense and that kind of style. Like I'm not in love with Mims, but if it's like you're going to grab a guy who's going to play in the NFL for 5 or 6 years and be solid and probably put up a couple, 500 or 600 yard seasons here or there. Like, yeah, sure. That's,
and that might be what this class is. You just need guys who are just bodies at this point and who can fill a role because, he fills a deep threat role. After Scantling leaves, you have 3 years of team control with Mims, and he fills that, take the top off the guy. So, I mean, I don't mind it. Like, I think it makes a ton of sense. I think the one thing I'll say with Hyatt is that I remember listening to something, he recognized that, like, last year he couldn't compete physically, so he ate more and got bigger because he's a wiry guy. Like, he's very like, Mims is like a deep threat who's like compact, but Hyatt's like a wire, like a 6 foot, like 183 or whatever. Like he's skinny.
I want to ask. So I mentioned Jonathan Mingo, who I feel like is his, at least on Chiefs Twitter, his stock is red hot. He was a guy that I think you're rolling the dice a little bit, but also I go back to the Patrick Mahomes, reality, which is, hey, this is a guy who's got a lot of athleticism. I felt like his hands were not as aggressive, like in terms of catching the ball as I would have liked. But what do you think about Jonathan Mingo?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like a lot of these guys, like he's athletic, runs well, going deep. I think there were times where I didn't love him, like when he wasn't going deep. Like it was just like when he was when he was told like, oh, you're running like an out or something. He was half giving effort, and it was just not like a pretty look. And like sometimes that's just the offense is weird. Like they do half field reads, so he's not really in the play. So I don't know how much I can attribute to that, but
that Ole Miss offense was weird. I noticed that because I was watching Zack Evans, and like it just some of the plays it felt like half the team was checked out a little bit.
Yeah, so I mean, like you can't like fault him, but like he's also just a guy. Like it's almost like it's kind of hard to compare him to this guy, but like he's like Q in the second round a little bit. Like he's good after the catch, bigger, more athletic. I think he's more physical than Q is right now.
Oh yeah.
But there's definitely some stuff to like about him, and I think he's a guy that's like. I know a lot of people are throwing out the AJ Brown comparison. I just like don't know if he's ever going to be like your X receiver in that sense. I think he's like a power slot because he's really good at run blocking and stuff. So I like him that role for sure.
Yeah, I think that's like I almost want to say he's closer to Juju in terms of being a bigger, like you said, bigger slot. And it's the same thing. Like he actually ran pretty well, especially for his size. Holy cow! But I think I don't see that like quick twitchiness that like Q has more of that than he does, getting in and out of breaks and that type of thing. So let me ask this last wide receiver question. Who is your day 3 guy? If you had one receiver from day 3.
Okay, here's the thing. I have 2 names that are being mocked in day 3, but I don't see them as day 3 guys.
Okay.
Raheem Jarrett and Trey Palmer.
Okay. I'm a big Raheem Jarrett guy.
Okay, so we're on the same page here.
Yes.
I love Raheem Jarrett. He's so in the KCSN draft guide, everyone gets a my guy, and he was the first guy I put down because I think just some of the stuff that he can do with the ball in his hands, especially, is special. And when you watch that Maryland offense, we talked about how Zay Flowers had Phil Yurkovich and stuff. That QB does not know how to put the ball to help his receivers.
Oh, it's so bad. It's impressive that Jarrett survived some of those. That just it was that some of these offenses, like we laugh at these receivers, but also some of the quarterback play was rough. But
so I mean, he's a guy that's like, okay, when you look at the class and it's like, okay, you got like we just named whatever 8 guys that in your top 8 or whatever, and it's like after that you're like, I like him, but he's got this. So he's a guy that's I have him 8th on my board as a receiver, and that's probably higher than a lot of people do. But I'm just looking at a guy who's like really good athlete, 5-star pedigree, productive with the ball in his hands, understands how I like how he runs routes. Like it's very explosive and sudden the way he runs out. He has the inside-outside versatility. I think there's a certain he needs to get better on his hands and attacking leverage and such, but that's just stuff that's going to come with more experience. And he's still a 3-year player at a mid Power 5 school. So if he was a 5-star that went to Ohio State, we might be talking about him as a first-round pick because he's that talented. But it just happened he went to Maryland.
Yeah. I think I agree with you. I think that all the tools are there, right? You look at day 3, you're looking for toolsy guys, and he's one of them. And I agree. He looks he's just got juice when he's got the ball in his hand and can make people just make them miss or move around them or hop over them. You mentioned Trey Palmer, not a guy I see what you see there, like on day 3, like, okay, here's a speed guy. It's almost like Jalen Hyatt is like the first round version. Marvin Mims is like that day 2 version. And then Trey Palmer is like day 3 version. Like in terms of play style and molds, would you agree with that, or am I way off?
I can definitely see that. I like Palmer's speed ability and the way he can just go down the field. I think the hands just sometimes are just so bad where it's like, okay, like how can this guy be an NFL player if he's going to drop all these passes? But like, I think it was a Purdue game where he just like went crazy. He might have 300 yards or something, like total, because he had rushing yards and stuff. Where he just running through like defense, and he's just blowing by guys. So like, that's something I can point to in the draft room and say like, okay, he has an elite speed. So especially in Kansas City, and we're looking for. I don't think Valley.
Oh, I think we're all right. You're back now. I think you're back. I was gonna fill the silence, so you're still. Looks like Zach is buffering. He went back to the early 2000s dial-up internet for a minute, and that's all right.
Yeah.
Back? Oh, almost back. Okay. There we are. And look, Kyle's here too.
I was going to say that Palmer, you can you point to that speed. You have Mahomes with his big arm, and I don't think Scantlin's going to be here next year. So you have that deep threat who can replace him in that such. So that's how I see that mold turning out. Obviously, you got to work on his hands, become more fluid. I don't think he's very fluid, cutting wise. So it's very linear player, but I think when you have size like that and speed, it's something that you can work with and just add to your room.
Yeah, and he's got good size for a burner, and he's got special teams ability that I don't know. I'm sure Dave Tobe could maybe work something out, but I don't know. I'm sure Sky Moore is going to be returning punts in 2024. But all right, so I know we're closing in on an hour. I was going to ask you more of this, but we got into this wide receiver class deeper than I thought. Let me ask this. You mentioned the KCSN draft guide. Obviously, those guys do great work. And if you're listening to this podcast and somehow don't know who those guys are and haven't picked that draft guide up, you should do that. Zach was, part of that team, and they, like I said, they do excellent work. You talked about the My Guy stamp. So I know I know Keon White is high on your board of guys that you absolutely love. I'm kidding. You are, I think, the leader in Keon White slander on Twitter. But who
There's
is?
A lot of leaks. I don't know if you guys mean. There's a lot of leaks.
Listen, and I am secretly I'm a Keon White fan, but not on day one. Like, if
That's
he's
fair.
I enjoyed him as a day two project, that kind of thing, not as a number 31. So let me ask this. The draft is close. It's night one.
Sorry, did I hear you say day two project?
Yeah.
Yeah, this fan base doesn't do well with those, so if we could avoid any day two projects, I would greatly appreciate it, because I just spent 3.5 years defending a kid who played wide receiver for 8 minutes before he got to the Chiefs, and it was a day two project, and everybody thought he should be Jesus at wide receiver. So
what are you talking about? Tyreek Hill went on day 3.
Yeah, anyways, that's not. He was a running back when they drafted him too, Tom.
I know. So Zach, if it's into night one, they've just announced the 31st pick, and it's the best possible pick. What pick would make you the happiest at 31?
Realistically, I think it's got to be Johnston or Addison. You give me one of those two, I'm happy. I'm very happy.
What if I said it didn't even have to be a realistic? I mean, don't say Will Anderson, but
Miles Murphy falling to 31. There's some talk about him not being loved in the league as much and him falling into mock drafts. If that dude's at 31, then I'm ecstatic if they take him.
Yeah, we've talked about him before. I think Murphy's one of those guys that if he's in the 20s, be on the phone. What do you? Okay, 60 seconds. What do you think of his teammate Brian Brzee?
Okay, I like Brzee a lot. I think there's a athletic profile that you can use to mold, and especially what we've seen with Cullen do with Saunders, Dana, Turk, different guys you can list, and how much that impact of him coming, their 2021 seasons versus their 2022 seasons when he was here. I think Brzee is a guy that he can help mold and learn next to Chris as well.
Mm-hmm.
Do enough
learn and also have next to Chris, me likey, that part of the conversation.
Yeah,
Because
that's definitely part of it.
that means we're Zach is on the same page as me, as opposed to that wild statement you made earlier about trading Chris Jones.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Chris will be here and be getting an extension.
That was tongue in cheek.
I know it was. I'm just
And I
being
know
smart
we've
aleck
talked
on
before on the podcast about, and this would be like one of those like taking at 31. It might be a reach, but Adeboire at 31 would also be fun, just to be able to move him around. Like,
Are you fully all right? You said that. Are you fully in on this kid? I know his measurables are bonkers.
I would listen. I was in on him before his measurables, man. Like
I've
again,
watched tape,
day
and
two guy.
I'm trying, and I'm trying. You said day 2 though.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, but again, at day 2, if the board fell really terrible and we're there at 31, looks like Zach has fallen off into space. I know
He's currently, I think, fixing his internet. So
Yeah. We'll get him. We'll either get him back or we won't. But
there he is.
Yep, right on back, right on cue. He's either there or he's like if.
My fault.
No,
For
you're
the
good.
content people, this is my fault. Yeah, with Brazil, I was gonna say that he's a guy that you bet on the athletic profile. He had as a freshman he dominated, and that's like when you look at a 19-year-old going into the ACC and playing it incredibly well, that's special. And he's dealt with torn ACL, and then last year he had his sister dying and kidney infection and different things like that. It's just hard to say like you're expecting him to be the first round prospect that you hoped, and after all that stuff happening. So you're looking at that like profile, his freshman year tape, and then the flashes that you get, enough flashes you get from the other stuff is like that makes me feel good about like taking him at 31. I feel like you're gonna get a good player.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, like you said, the stuff he had to deal with off the field, I didn't even know about the infection until kind of later in the process. It's pretty wild. But the tools are definitely there. We talked a little bit while you were sucked into cyberspace about Adeboire. Like if the board fell really terribly for the Kansas City, I think that they don't want to trade down with the draft being in there. But there's lots of.
I think for me to feel good about Tommy, it'd be like very bad. Like all the receivers go, all the defensive end goes, all the tackles go. Like it would have to be like the perfect storm for Tommy to feel good at 31.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I love his fit on the defense. I don't love his value there because I think that he's one of those guys that you can move around. While we're talking defensive line, I want to get your thought on one more prospect because it's. I was actually listening to a lot of draft podcasts, and it was the first time I heard somebody outside of like the Chiefs people mock this guy to him or to the Kansas City, and that's BJ Ojulari. What are your thoughts on?
I saw that mock.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So
why, Zach? Because he doesn't fit Spags' mold, or because of the player?
Oh, he's so perfect. He's so good. Like
he's so good.
Just watch this man run the arc and bend the corner and chase down the quarterback. Like it's so beautiful to watch. Like I don't even need him to play run. Like he's fine at run defense. Like he's a good backside run defender. Fine up when it's run at him. But this man on third down is gonna run the arc, turn the corner, and chase down every quarterback in this. Like it's beautiful.
Yeah. So if they're sitting at 31 and you're kind of at that second. Like for me, he's the top. He's almost in that first like pocket of pass rushers. I want to put him.
Y'all
there.
don't think he's in the first pocket? I'm sorry.
I think like
this is me at the moment. How in that kid? How do you not take him in the first round if you're any team in the need of a pass rusher? How many pass rushers do you actually have ahead of him?
Yeah, no, I have 4. I have 4 guys ahead of him as a pass rusher.
And so the 4 guys ahead of him would be the 2 Givens.
I've also got 4. Yeah,
I have Will Anderson my first.
Yeah.
Nolan is my second. Miles is 3. Kyrie is 4, and then BJ is 5.
I know Nolan and Will are basically guaranteed ahead of him. That makes sense. But that's where those other 3 guys is where I was like, I know he's not traditional. Also, Joe Cullen exists. I'm hoping beyond hope that we do get somebody that can turn the edge, because if you get somebody that can turn the edge with Chris and the rest of that defensive line that exists in the way that they're built,
Mhm.
you're literally doing what Chris is built for, which is funneling the quarterback either forward into Chris's lap, which is bad for all quarterback parties involved,
Yeah.
or funneling him right into a guy who is standing on the other edge, because that's basically where you'll find Mike Dana, George Karlaftis, insert other guy on the edge here, standing there 1v1, holding a guy up, almost spying the other side of the defense to keep
So-
it contained.
I have to ask this because
Go
there was a name off your list that I think is Lucas Van Ness. Where's he fall?
He's 6 for me as a pass rusher. It's
Yeah.
not like I don't like him. I just don't think like there's I don't think there's enough like tape showing his pass rush ability and his run defense to say like this guy is like, you know, he's so project, and I get why like NFL teams, he's big, he fits the mold, he's athletic and stuff like that, but I just don't see him
Very similar to
better.
Karlaftis, but just not necessarily as much starting experience. And I feel like he's a little twitchier, but like I feel like Karlaftis is much stronger.
Yeah, I think
at times, or at least it
like,
showed more power.
Yeah, I think there's like Van Ness has a very you know what Van Ness is gonna do, like, and you kind of know what Karlaftis is gonna do, but like he can hit you with a little bit of, like something else. Van Ness is just good, like 2-arm. I'm just running through your chest.
Yeah,
type pass rusher. So yeah.
All right, rank these guys. So we're sitting at 31. Rank these pass rushers: Will McDonald, Felix Anudike-Uzomah, BJ Ojulari.
BJ 1, Felix 2, Will a distant 3.
Okay, we're on agreed, or we're in agreement there. So let's say the board falls and it's really terrible. You know, I don't know, nobody takes a quarterback or anything. Like, just absolutely apocalyptic scenario. Felix or Adebawore? I know they technically play, or not Felix. Will McDonald's or Adebawore?
Adebawore, I guess. I mean,
okay, good answer.
Athletic profile. Don't right. At least somebody who can stand up against the run.
Will McDonald or Keon White?
Oh my God! Let me. You know, we're staying at 31, right? So I'm gonna sleep on this, and then when the draft reopens Friday, I'm gonna figure out what I want to do.
Yeah, no, I that was a gotcha. Okay, this will be my last question. What is, if there was a position that they took at 31 that you think would be like a realistic surprise, right? Like, obviously they're not going to take a quarterback, but like a position that would surprise you, or maybe even scare you. Like, I know everybody says like, oh, running back. Like, I think that would scare all of us.
I'll throw one out here. Interior offensive line.
Okay.
If they go guard and say, we're gonna let this guy like if Osiris Torrance is there at 31 and they just love Osiris Torrance and think he's like an all-pro guard for 10 years or whatever, and they're like, okay, Tooney's going to be like dumb expensive next year. We can't afford to pay him with Jawan Capit going up and, you know, Chris on his extension and whatever else may be. And the board kind of sucks here. Like, let's just take a guy who we know is going to be, you know, when Trey probably gets his payday elsewhere and Tooney has to be let go, we can build around Jawan, him, Creed, and then whoever the right tackle will be.
Interesting, because the Chiefs' MO is usually not to pay the center, not pay the guards. And I know that's going to be tough to do with Creed being how absolutely one of one.
Yeah, that's an off-season discussion.
Don't do this, because they did it with Mitch Morse and Rodney Hudson. Don't do this.
Different. Creed is different.
I agree with you, but that franchise has a history of valuing the center position at a different level than they value guards and tackles.
The one that I've talked about, and unfortunately there's not a lot of value there, and there's not, like, it feels like every year there's like a safety that stinks in the first round. There's not one of those guys this year, but like, if for some reason Brian Branch was sitting there at 31, like, I feel like grabbing that third safety or a guy who like can give you more flex.
He's better than Brian Cook right now. Like, he would probably start on this team, and then when they go to dime packages, he would come in the box and dominate.
Yeah, and then you also have the ability to not have to worry about necessarily figuring out what you're doing with Justin Reed next year or the year after.
Yeah,
once
kind of the same thing. So
yeah, I mean, I think he's a guy that, like, I was thinking, like, because, you know, safety's kind of like low key one of their needs, because like Edwards and Bush are both on 1 years, and Reed is kind of on a 1 year, like because it's so non-guaranteed that final year. But yeah, I think Branch is a guy that I would be happy with at 31.
Okay, so we'll end it like this because we've done that now, and this will be my final question, and then we can get out of here. Nobody wants to take a tackle in the first round, it doesn't sound like, in this group. Edges are gone, receivers are gone, tight ends are gone, because I would rather take a tight end than a tackle also.
Well, which tackles are we talking about? Because are we talking about Roderick, Paris?
That's what I was getting ready to get to. You know, we're talking the apocalyptic scenario. You know, you're missing all your wide receivers and edges that you like. You don't have the tight end that you want, the weapon that you could get there, and your top 2 tackles are off the board. Who's the tackle you're taking? Who's the tackle at 31? Because the top 2 tackles are likely not going to be at 31 if
I can pick Anton or Darnell Wright.
Potentially.
Yeah, I would take one of those at 31. I think you get a right tackle. Like I think if you take Anton, you put him at left, you put Jawan back at right, and you're set at those 2 spots for 4 years. And then if you take Darnell, you put him at right, and Jawan plays left.
Okay. Because I've seen a lot of people dreading tackle in the first round.
Look, I understand the dreading of tackle because it's not worth, like, when you look at the investments across the offensive line, like, the marginal gain from that first round tackle versus a first round defensive end, first round wide receiver, like, it's not as big at those other positions. But when you think about, like, the future down the line, like, you're paying, like, you're going to have 5 years of team control for cheap on this guy. And, you know, I think the tackle class is, like, at least at the top, is very good. Like,
so that's I guess the other caveat to this is how far down your tackle board do you go before you're not comfortable in the first round? Do you go 4 deep?
Yeah,
do you go 6 deep?
It's 5, I think. I mean, I don't think Skowronski's a tackle, but if you want to count him a tackle, that's fine. Like, then he would be in that 5. So it's Paris, Broderick, Skowronski, Anton, Darnell, right?
Yeah, I think so. I kept. Is it Skowronski or Skowronski?
I think it's Skowronski.
But
it's weird, and it's got a bunch of weird letters, and there's like a Y in there or something.
Yeah, I agree with you that, like, I don't think Skowronski stays at tackle, but if you took Skowronski and said, all right, we're going to let you try to fail at right tackle, and then if that doesn't work, then we're just going to throw you over at guard next year and figure it out, like, that makes sense to me. But again, he won't be there. I agree. Like, in my rankings, I had Harrison over right. I value the guys who could play right or left tackle because then you have insurance if the Jawan Taylor experiment doesn't work out. So, and then, I would say, the top 5, that's that first pocket.
I also think Darnell's more athletic than he looks on film, like from the testing. But he also, like, in that Tennessee offense, it looks like he's playing in a phone booth, like he's playing guard at tackle. It's weird to look at. Like, he's not, like, really ever covering the arc or anything. So I just question, how does he like, it's the same thing I have with DeJuan Jones. Like, is that guy going to be able to cover 10 yards deep in the pocket, like, fast enough? Like, I just don't think that's a first round player. Like,
sure.
You know, and we just went through this with Orlando. Like, the reason that the Chiefs got rid of Orlando is because he's slow footed and he can't, you know, it was hard for him to pass.
Well, and he wanted top 5 left tackle money.
Yeah, we'll knock that down, whatever. But but, like, he was slow footed and couldn't really, like, pass protect that well. Like,
definitely wasn't natural for him. He did not. Pass blocking is not his natural fit. Yeah,
definitely. So I think that's, like, where you fall in that trap with, like, DeJuan again. You're like, you're playing on the right side, but it's like tackle. Like, you gotta run, you gotta be able to move, you know.
Especially in this NFL and especially in Andy's offense.
Yeah, and, like, you know, this is kind of going back to, like, what we talked about before with the, you know, Ojulari and Karlaftis and comparing that combination. Like, I wish that the Chiefs had a solution at wide receiver that wasn't, like, so we really need some dire thing. So we go, like, speed rusher, round 1, like Ojulari, and then give me, like, Dexter or Benton at 63 and just make this defensive line just, like, terrifying to play against.
Exactly. I like that idea too.
And, like, that might be even fine if you get, like, a Hopkins, for example. Like, you might still be able to do that, but, like, that's going to have to come down in the next 10 days, and I don't know if that's going to happen. But still, like, those Like that's where I was like, in this weaker wide receiver class, I kind of wish that you were able to attack the defensive line.
Yeah. All right. Well, we appreciate everybody for joining us and spending some time with us this evening. Tom, do you have anything else before we get out of here?
Folks, just make sure you get your Keon White jerseys nice and early. Tweet as many clips of Keon White to Zach as you can. He turned his camera off because he's certainly giving me the middle finger.
Yes. All right.
No,
So
listen, man, if
on that
Keon
front,
White is the pick at 31, I'm gonna lose it. I'm gonna be in Kansas City for it, and I don't know where I'll be at the time, but I might just go back. Like if I'm not at Union Station, I might go back just to boo him louder. I hope for Veach's sake he doesn't draft Keon White, because I think the boos will be it would be like Donovan McNabb level boos. Like it will be bad.
yeah, I don't know that it would be great if he was at 31 for the boo factor, but with that, Zach, where can everybody find you and your stuff, and where can they follow along with everything you're doing? Because I know you got stuff going on in different places, so where can they get all that at?
Yeah, at Keon White fan lover account. It's a good spot for
This
me.
is
But no,
that's his burner.
at Zack Eisen 21 is where you can find everything about me on Twitter. So
With a K,
yeah.
folks, not an H, no missing, not 3 letters. Zach with a K.
No, it's actually like Zach Pickens, like ZACCH.
For those of you not watching and only on audio, you couldn't get the whole part of that joke because there was just a bunch of facial expressions and laughs there. So we're giving you the audio feed in. With that, everybody make sure you go follow Zach. He's putting out fantastic stuff. He did some awesome work in the KCSN draft guide. Shout out to those guys. That draft guide is awesome every year. All of that. Make sure you follow us on all of our handles at Kingdom Says Pod, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. Yes, TikTok is alive and well and running. Make sure you follow Arrowhead Tom on his Twitter account as well, because not only are we putting out a bunch of draft content from our handle, but he's putting out a bunch on his stuff too, and continues to talk draft with folks every day. So if that's your kind of thing, make sure you give him a follow. Like, rate, review, subscribe on all the platforms. That really helps us get to more people so they can hear this content for you guys. That way we can help some people learn some more about these players, because I learned a whole bunch in this hour and 15 minutes from the two of you. So appreciate you again stopping in, Zach. And for all of you listening or watching, thank you. And we will see you guys on the next one. And in the meantime, Tom will be putting out all kinds of content in between on all those handles I mentioned earlier. So go follow them.
Please.
Have a good one.